Carroll Gibbons and the Savoy Hotel Orpheans, by permission of Savoy Hotel Limited, in Savoy Memories, devised by Noel S. Rogers in conjunction with Carroll Gibbons and John Watt, with Debroy Somers, Billy Mayerl, Van Phillips, Al Collins, Howard Jacobs, Ramon Newton, Ann Lenner, the Rhythm Brothers, and from America, Rudy Vallee. Compere, John Watt.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're celebrating tonight the Jubilee of Dance Music at the Savoy Hotel. 15 years ago, on Friday, the 13th of April, 1923, the Savoy Band's first broadcast. But it wasn't an unlucky day for them because they've been doing it ever since. Way back in the distant old days, when that old demon syncopation hit these shores for the first time, there was dance music at the Savoy Hotel. In those days, the drummer was kingpin of the band, and rhythm was played almost entirely on the bottom of saucepans. How the old place has changed. Well, in this program, we want to skate lightly over the birth of ragtime and trace the history of Savoy dance music from then until the present day. The whole thing began in 1912. Alexander's Ragtime Band. 1913, Waiting for the Robert E. Lee. Then 1914 and the war. But the tunes, with a slightly different flavor, continued to pour out. But the theme song of that period, 1914 to 1918, seems to be this tune. You probably heard it as Vi Lorraine and George Robey sang it when you were home on leave. You were the only girl in the world. Then came the transition period. Armistice was signed, and in 1919...
How you gonna keep 'em down on the farm after they see Paris? How you gonna keep 'em from Piccadilly gathering around and painting the town? How you gonna keep 'em away from home? That's the mystery. They'll never want to see a rake or plow. And who the deuce would probably boo a cow? How you gonna keep 'em down on the farm after they've seen Paris?
Well, so much for the early days. Remember, we're not dealing with history, but just with the history of the Savoy Band. And in 1920, the Savoy Havana Band was formed. Bert Ralton came over from America and brought most of his musicians with him, with the exception of a pianist who was engaged on this side and turned out to be Billy Mayerl. He'll be telling you about that in a minute. Well, in those days, they were playing tunes like Dardanella, and then there were show tunes like Alice Blue Gown from Irene.
In my sweet little Alice Blue Gown, when I first wandered down into town, I was both proud and shy as I felt every eye, and in every shop window I'd print passing by, then in manner or fashion I'd frown, till the world seemed to smile all around. But it wilted, I wore it, I'll always adore it, my sweet little Alice Blue Gown.
As I've already told you, at this time, 1920-21, the Savoy Havana Band contained only one Englishman, an Englishman called Billy Mayerl. He's got his own band now and is conducting it in Over She Goes at the Saville Theatre. But he's here in the studio tonight for a few moments to tell you all about it, and I hope to play to you. Billy, tell us how you joined the Savoy Havana Band.
Well, John, the Savoy Havana Band was formed by Bert Ralton in 1920. He arrived from America with a band, but without a pianist. He'd gone sick or let him down or something. Well, I was at that time playing at a hotel in Southampton at £7 a week. £7 a week, John.
Big money.
It was in those days. Well, one day, a rather American-looking bloke, I call him bloke because he was a bloke, came in, and he sat down near the orchestra, and he seemed very attentive towards me. And after a bit of time, he said, "Are you American?" I said, "No, thank heaven," or sort of words to that effect, you know. Well, he said, "I've just arrived from America, and I've formed a new band at Savoy Hotel, London. I like your playing. You seem to be the only one of any idea of American technique in this country. Would you like to come along, and how much do you want?" Well, John, in those days, my young brain sort of worked quickly. It doesn't now, of course. Well, I said, "I'm getting £7 a week." I thought to myself, dare I ask for 8 or 9 or... Yes, I think I'll dare. I'll ask for 9. Well, I said, "Mr. Ralton, I'll take it at 9. And you know, before I finished the words, John, he interrupted me. He said, "Well, we won't quibble about £1. You want 19. Well, I'll pay you 20. Jolly decent, I thought, as a matter of fact. But still, I was going to ask 9, so I promptly fainted, and when they gave me the brandy, or whatever they gave me, I came round, and I found that I was the only Englishman in the band. And we were the first band to go on the halls, all long before Carroll Gibbons or Debroy Somers or these other assassins who came in the other places. They weren't thought of in those days. Well, that went on for quite a long time until Savoy wanted a relief band. There was a little band called the Selma Four, consisting of the two McKinnon brothers and two other assassins. I don't remember their names now. Then the next step was, well, in America, you know, Paul Whiteman was starting what he called his special orchestrations of dance tunes. Sounds good, doesn't it? Well, Bert Rolton thought, it's no good trying to copy these orchestrations of Whiteman. We must have original ones over here, but we can't get them all the way from America. So he decided to find an arranger, and they found Debroy Somers, you know, our friend Bill. And Bill became the arranger of the band. Then suddenly another band was wanted because they were going to inaugurate dancing in the restaurant where we used to play as well as a ballroom downstairs. Some sort of band was formed, and one day a shy-looking bloke came along and sat down at the piano, and, matter of fact, he played damn well, I don't mind telling you. I got terribly jealous. I thought, who's this fellow stealing all my thunder? And I'm the chap here at Savoy, not this fellow. Well, you know who it turned out to be, John?
Now, who was it?
Carroll Gibbons.
I knew all the time.
You knew all the time, did you? Well, he stole all my thunder, and but there's one thing Carroll can't do. That's play Kitten on the Keys as fast as I can with as few mistakes, I hope, anyway.
Right. Will you try and do that, Bill?
I'll do my best.
Thank you, Bill, like a kitten. That brings back the good old days, because it was about the time of Kitten on the Keys that broadcasting from the Savoy started. Jeffries and Eckersley of the BBC called at the Savoy one day and asked Bert Ralston if it was possible to record, on records that was, the big drum. I mean, it wasn't. It was in the old days of horn recording, when the band even had to use a sort of permanent wedge in the piano pedal. And early experiments of broadcasting were made from the ballroom at the Savoy to the mirror room with the Savoy Havana Band. The total distance was about 100 yards, and the fact that anything was heard at the other end was considered to be, and probably was, a miracle. Well, that was the first broadcast at the Savoy. Nobody took much notice of these early tests or took broadcasting very seriously. And it wasn't until, as I've told you, the 13th of April 1923 that the Savoy Band was on the air for the first time. In the first program was included the tune you've just heard, Kitten on the Keys, and also 3 o'clock in the morning, which became almost a signature tune for the band. You remember how it goes? Well, and then Bert Ralston resigned and went on a tour to South Africa, where he met his tragic death, and Ramon Newton took charge. And later, the Savoy Orpheans were started, and one of the tunes they made famous was Last Night on the Back Porch.
I love her in the morning, and I love her at night. I love her, yes, I love her, when the stars are shining bright. I love her in the springtime, and I love her in the fall. But last night on the back porch, I loved her best of all.
In 1923, the Savoy Orpheans were formed, and Debroy Somers was in charge. I had hoped that he'd be able to come down here tonight to take part in the program, but his many duties prevented him from doing that, so he made a special recording this morning, and here he is on it. Tell me, Mr. Somers, how did you first join the Savoy Band?
Well, I was actually at the Savoy before the Orpheans started. I went to the old Havana Band as an arranger. Then, after Bert Rolson left, the Orpheans started. We had a certain amount of difficulty in finding a conductor for the Orpheans, and eventually I had to take it on myself. I didn't particularly want to, being still a bit highbrow, but eventually did, anyway, and continued to take it over for 3.5 years.
Well, how many were there in the band then?
Well, at that time, 11, and only 2 of them were Britishers, of whom I was one. There was one Belgian, and all the rest were American, who seemed to have the monopoly of jazz playing at that time. But when I left the Savoy, after 3.5 years of the Orpheans, the positions were reversed, and there were only 2 Americans, and all the rest were British. Rudy Vallee came over later, as second sax, and about the same time, Phillips joined the band. We had quite a number of people in the Orpheans who eventually became band leaders on their own. Apart from Rudy Vallee and Phillips, there were Billy Mayerl, Ramon Newton, Howard Jacobs, and the Storita brothers, Rudy, Ray, and Val.
You must have had a lot of amusing experiences in those early days, Bill.
Oh, yes, many of them. Both the bands, as you know, were broadcasting regularly in England, but our first American broadcast was quite a thrill. In the middle of the transmission, a telephone call came through from King's Lynn, where an amateur experimenter had picked up the relay from America and asked if we would like to hear our music back. We did hear it over the telephone. Our music had actually been transmitted to America, relayed back to King's Lynn, and over the telephone to the Savoy. And we actually heard it through the phone a fraction of a second before hearing the actual tune from the band, who were about 60 yards away.
That's very interesting. You've got a lot of other wireless experiences, though, I'm sure.
Oh, yes, the Savoy bands have always been associated with wireless. Marconi himself had a suite at the hotel, and one night, while the Rif War in Morocco was going on, he sent for me to hear messages coming through from Morocco. And one of the messages I actually heard was that both sides in that war were listening to the Savoy Orpheans. There was a headline in the paper the next day, "The Band That Stopped the War."
Well, what tune do you generally use for stopping wars?
That's rather a difficult question. But some of the most popular numbers at that time were "Horsey, Keep Your Tail Up," "Last Night on the Back Porch," "Show Me the Way to Go Home," and "Dream Daddy." We also started with the Savoy, the entertainment side, as it were, of dance band broadcasts, with our version of "It Ain't Gonna Rain No More," that Norman Long used to sing. But I've talked enough. I'll leave it to Carroll Gibbons to play the number that we often used to play in 1924, Irving Berlin's famous waltz tune, "What'll I Do?"
What'll I do when you are far away and I am blue? What'll I do? What'll I do when I am wondering who is kissing you? What'll I do? What'll I do with just a photograph to tell my troubles when I'm alone with only dreams of you that won't come true? What'll I do?
And now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce to you a famous former member of the Savoy Orpheans, Rudy Vallee. He's going to speak to you and, I hope, play to you or sing to you, or both, all the way from America. He's waiting in the studio over there now, so we'll go over to New York for Rudy Vallee. Over to New York.
Hi-ho, everybody. This is Rudy Vallee here in America, and you might wonder why I'm taking part in this Savoy Memories program. The explanation is quite simple. During the years 1924 and 25, I spent the happiest 9 months, I think, of my life playing in the Savoy Havana Band. I was the only American in the band, playing the saxophone, and the singing was done by Ramon Newton and our pianist, your very famous Billy Mayerl. I enjoyed that experience tremendously, not only playing with the boys, but seeing the sights of London, Cambridge, which I used to good advantage when I returned to college here in the fall of 1925. As I said, I played the saxophone then, although I do more singing today, but I thought maybe a little bit of a saxophone solo that I used to play in those days might prove welcome at this point. It's called Sax-O-Phun. That doesn't sound much like a Howard Jacobs. In fact, I find myself a little rusty in the saxophone. I hardly ever touch it these days. As most of you who tune in our Thursday evening programs probably know, my specific task today is to try to do a little announcing and singing. I thought maybe you might enjoy a little medley of songs that has been our privilege to introduce through our programs and records here over the period of last 8 years. We call it our little comic medley.
For I was a vagabond lover in search of a sweetheart, it seemed, and I knew that someday I'd discover her, the girl of my vagabond dreams. Deep night, stars in the sky above, I met a girl that I thought I could love. Her name was Kitty, from Kansas City. Sure was a pity she wasn't pretty. Then I said, I'm lonesome and blue, but when I look at you, there's one thing I know is true. I wouldn't be lonesome, I wouldn't be blue, if I had a girl like you. Then she said, my time is your time. I said, gee, that's fine. Let's go to some cabaret. What do you say? Then she said, okay. Then we started on a nightclub spree. A little drink or two, you see. For she brought a new kind of love to me. We filled the steins of dear old Maine, shouted till the rafters rang. We were dancing with tears in our eyes. We were having a wonderful time. Then came a sudden surprise. Someone gave me a kick from behind. 'Twas Betty Coed, you know that girl from college. Betty Coed and all how she was mad. Then she started in to show her knowledge. Right then and there I knew I was in bad. I said, I remember you from somewhere. She replied, you bet you do. She recalled to me that somewhere. Then I knew I was through. I said, I don't feel well, must leave you for a spell. They seem to believe all my little white lies. I went away the very next day, heading for the trees and pines. I went to see not one girl but three, living in the Carolines. But I find after all that some girls are quickly forgotten and gone with the dawn of the day. But but some you remember, like the last glowing ember, haunting your memory and dreams. For I'm just a vagabond lover, in search of a sweetheart, it seems. And I know that someday I'll discover her, the girl of my vagabond dreams.
Thank you, Rudy Vallee. We're now back in the London studio. There was a famous singer of songs in the Savoy Orpheans. Countless tunes have been made by him, one of which you can hear now, Show Me the Way to Go Home. He's in the studio tonight, and he's going to sing to you as he did in the old days. And his name is Ramon Newton.
I'm very happy, ladies and gentlemen, to be back on the air again, singing one of the old songs that I used to sing at the Savoy. And if you remember it after all these years, I only hope I can remember it too. Show me the way to go home. I'm tired and I want to go to bed. I had a little dream about an hour ago, and it's gone right to my head. No matter where I roam, on land or sea or foam, you will always hear me singing the song, Show me the way to go home. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to sing to you another song that was very popular in the old days. And as Billy Mayerl and I were associated for so many years, he's going to play it for me. The song is Green Daddy. Billy, can you play it in E-flat? Do you remember that key? Oh, thank you so much. Oh. Dream Daddy, Dream Daddy, wonderful Daddy of mine. Every night after I've said my prayers, your tender voice drives away all my cares. Dream Daddy, Dream Daddy, when the stars begin to shine, that's when I lay away my books and my toys, and listen in with all the girlies and boys. Dream Daddy, Dream Daddy, wonderful Daddy of mine.
Thanks, Raymond. That was fine. And thank you, too, Bill, for company. Well, now, ladies and gentlemen, we come to 1926 and the first 6/8 tune to sweep the country. You may remember it. You can still hear it sweeping the country sometimes. It's called Valencia. Well, with that familiar signature tune, may take you back to the last 6 months during which Phillips has been playing it to you in his weekly broadcast. But it takes him back much further. When did you write the two of us, Van?
In 1926, John. It was my first song. No one was more surprised than I was, and it turned out to be the hit of the year. I was playing in the Savoy Havana Band at the time, and I well remember Ramon Newton singing it in our broadcasts from the Savoy.
Is it true that Carroll Gibbons was responsible for bringing you over to this country?
Yes, he's the culprit. We used to play together in the States. And after his first year at the Savoy, he brought me over to join him. But I left before they found me out. They told me I was a pretty foul saxophone player.
Well, in that case, we won't ask you to play the sax tonight, not after Rudy. But you're a conductor these days, aren't you? You've got a review that you're conducting coming into town and taking over Jack Buchanan's musical direction and all that. Can't you take over Carroll's band for a few moments and take the next tune through for us?
Love to, if I know it.
Of course you know it. Hallelujah. Ladies and gentlemen, Van Phillips conducting the Savoy Orpheans in Hallelujah. Thank you, Van. Well, it was about that time that Debroy Somers, in his turn, left the Savoy to go on the halls, and he must have left quite a lot of memories and quite a lot of friends behind him in the Savoy. He probably remembers how Shaliapin wrote a few bars of a song on the back of a menu, and Bill Somers turned it into a foxtrot. And how the crowd used to gather around the Savoy on Cup Tie days just to look at the place where the bands came from. There was only one band on the air in those early days. There was one Scotsman who came down all the way from the north especially to see the Savoy Havana Band. And when he saw them, he didn't believe it. He said, "They're not the Savoy Havana Band. I can't do the dialect. The Savoy Havana Band are all black." Nothing would alter his opinion at all. He went back to Scotland convinced that he'd been fooled. If that gentleman is listening to this program tonight, may I assure him that the Savoy Havana Band are all white. But to return to history. Well, after Bill Somers left, Carroll Gibbons took over, and he's been there ever since. And the tune of the period is one that he and the band are going to play now, Sweet Sue. Then came 1929 and the birth of the talking picture, and from then on, most of the hit songs were film songs. One of the first was our old friend, the Broadway Melody.
Don't bring a frown to old Broadway. You've got to clown on Broadway. Your troubles then are out of sight. For Broadway always wears a smile. A million lights, they flicker there. A million hearts beat quicker there. No skies of gray on that great wide way. That's the Broadway melody.
Then came Body and Soul, which Carroll Gibbons himself is going to play to you on the piano. And in 1931 came another tune, Today I Feel So Happy, from the first Jack Halbert film. Then came the first hillbilly. You remember it? Oh, Monah.
Old colored preacher was sitting on a log. Oh, Monah. Had his finger on the trigger and his eye on the hog. Oh, Monah. The gun said boo and the hog said zip. Oh, Monah. The preacher grabbed him with all his grip. Oh, Monah. Oh, Monah, you shall be free. Oh, lordy, lordy. Oh, Monah, you shall be free. When the good Lord set you free.
Then Bing Crosby swept onto the horizon and seemed to make every song that he sang into a hit. One of the first of these, although not the first, was a song called Please that came from the big broadcast. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce to you a band leader who has been continuously associated with the Savoy Band longer than any of the others, Al Collins. You know, Al, there wasn't any need for you to play any more of that signature tune of yours. We only heard it last Friday, and we hope we'll hear it again.
Well, I certainly hope you will, John. 17 years is quite a long time, and I'd like to make it another 17 if I can. I have nothing very much to say, except that I'm very glad to be on this program. And as the old song says, my fiddle is my sweetheart, and I'll just play myself off again.
Thank you very much, Al. Very glad to have you here. Next, ladies and gentlemen, we come to a comparatively recent tune, and Carroll Gibbons and the band are going to play a very special arrangement of a number from the Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers film Top Hat, one of the biggest songs of 1935, Cheek to Cheek. Well, now I must introduce you to yet another band leader who is a former member of the Orpheans, Howard Jacobs, whose saxophone delighted you so many times and has been recently delighting listeners in Australia. So we welcome him back to this country. Here is Howard Jacobs playing By the Waters of Minnetonka. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid we must almost say goodnight. But before we close, I'd like to introduce to you Noel S. Rogerson, who devised this show, and let him say hello and goodbye to you.
Before we say au revoir, I do hope, whether you've been fortunate to dance at the Savoy Hotel or heard the various Savoy dance bands, either on there or on the stage, we brought back to you some very many happy memories of the days gone by.
Thank you, Mr. Rogerson. And so now that ends our Savoy Memories program, I'm afraid, for tonight. 15 years ago, the Savoy Orpheans started broadcasting, and now they're still on the air.